Hi, welcome everyone to the third Alumni MasterClass. Today, the MasterClass will be taken by Yash Kotak on how to build products that users love. Welcome everyone. Yash, as you all know, is an alumnus of IIT Gandhinagar. He has experience in building products for the IoT, media, fashion, e-commerce, and hyperlocal logistics. He's currently a senior product manager at Swiggy, where he leads map and delivery experience products. Prior to Swiggy, Yash was a product manager at Myntra, where his team commercially sold the world's first fashion completely designed by artificial intelligence. Before Myntra, Yash was the co-founder of Lumos, a startup by IITGN alumni, building smart devices that automate air conditioners and save power. Yash graduated from IIT Gandhinagar in 2014 with a BTech in electrical engineering with minors in management and computer science. He was the recipient of Director's Gold Medal for outstanding overall performance and an award for outstanding innovation. Yash, welcome to this masterclass. A few housekeeping stuff for the participants. Yash will be open to answering questions. You could see a Q&A section in your Zoom window where you could type your questions and Yash will be happy to address them. Yash, over to you. Welcome and thank you for agreeing to give this masterclass.
Thank you, Professor Manjli, for this opportunity. Definitely, great opportunity and always a pleasure to interact with the students, with the alumni, and hopefully share some knowledge, have some discussions. I will get started with the presentation. Again, as Professor Manjli said, please feel free to ask your questions on the Q&A. I might not be able to take all of them while presenting, but I'll make sure that we come to the Q&A at the end of the presentation if I miss some questions. Having said that, let's get started. Okay, so what we are going to talk about is a basic introduction to product management, and we'll talk about how to build products that users love. And this is generally a process. There's a way of building products that users find value in, and users generally end up loving products that they find some value in. So we'll talk about that process. We'll talk about more details. We'll also go through a design exercise. But yeah, let me get started. I'll first start with a quick introduction. I think Professor Manjli already spoke about my stint at IIT as well as the products that I worked on. But I wanted to spend some time on my journey of getting into building products and getting into product management. So I graduated in 2014 and my journey into products actually started in my final year at IIT. So before this, again, we were building products, but we didn't really know how to build products properly. We were good at creating stuff, but we were not good at knowing what to create. And in my final year at IIT Gandhinagar, actually at the end of my third year internship, I got an opportunity to work with a company where I was a part-time intern and I was building a product for them. Also in my final year as a part of my BTech project in the entrepreneurship course, my project was to actually build a product and get it out to consumers. So what I and my team built was at that time a product which basically gets you coupons in restaurants, movies, and so on when you fill user surveys. And this was something that we built. Again, at that time we were at the old campus of IIT, so we did get some discounts from nearby restaurants and so on, and got some users as well as a lot of learnings. Figured out that product does not scale, and after graduation, I and a couple of my seniors at IIT ended up starting a startup called Lumos. Now, what Lumos was doing was it was an IoT startup where we were building air conditioners that basically automate the temperature, right? So today's air conditioners are not really smart. So you have to change the temperature. They don't know when you are comfortable. They are also not great at optimizing power. So we are creating a product that learns from your user needs, temperature needs, automates the air conditioner, and also ends up saving power, hence giving you like a win-win in terms of both comfort and cost. Built this for a couple of years. Lot of learnings in that entire journey. I have written about it, so you can actually Google about it and find out more. Made some mistakes as well because we were new to building products, we were new to building companies. So Lumos did not work out. Post that, I moved on to Myntra, and at Myntra was my first formal stint in product management, where I was actually working with product teams to understand how products are built. And that was again a great learning experience. Worked on some of the products on the Myntra app, worked on some of the products on Myntra's backend. We also started a new product, which is a B2B business to business product from Myntra called Vota, which helps fashion brands understand what fashion they should be making. And this was a part of the initiative where we were actually creating designs that were completely designed not by human designers, but by AI, and selling them. So worked on that for some time. Post that, moved on to Swiggy. And with here I am basically looking at maps and some consumer experience products. So throughout this entire journey, have had a lot of learnings on, what are the pitfalls in building products, what is a good process of building products, and that's what I would like to share with you. Before I start, I would like to spend some time on target audience, because there's something that when you are building products is very important, that you should know who you are building a product for. And here I want to talk about who this talk is for. So this talk is for basically students of IIT Gandhinagar who might be curious about, what this entire thing of building products is all about. Or it could be someone who, wants to build something. So you, let's say, have an idea, how to, code it up or how to build it up, but you want to understand how to create a better product so that users like it. Or you could be looking at potential career options post graduation. So that's something, if you are this person, then you might find this talk useful. Or you could be alumnus from IIT Gandhinagar who is curious about building products or want to move to a career path in product management. If you are already you might not find a lot of incremental value from this talk. Moving on. So now let's talk about the agenda. So what we will talk about today is, one is why are we talking about product management? Why is it important? Then we'll spend some time on what exactly product management is. Then we'll talk about how to design a product or a feature. So let's say you have an idea. Now, what is the good way of designing a product and feature and bringing it to customers? The next thing would be how to become good at building products. So how do you build that core skill for your own benefit? And then we'll spend some time on, if you want to get into a formal career in product management, then what are different ways of getting into it? And we'll leave some time for questions at the end. So let's start with, why talk about product management? And the reason, again, I thought we should be having this talk as well is because this is a relatively new and less known field in India. It started sometime in the late 2000s when companies like Flipkart started. Before that, product management was not very well known. So even when I was in college in the earlier years, I knew what are the different roles out there in the market, right? That you could be an engineer, you could be a analyst, data scientist, marketer, salesman, consultant, and so on. But product management was something that I didn't really know about. And, that's something that is a field that you might be interested in. Another thing is that, when you are in college and when you're doing your BTech, you learn a lot about how to create stuff. So you become a really good creator, how to code, how to build something mechanically, how to, create a chemical reaction or create something that basically is valuable. And that's a great skill to have. And it's very important in this world, right? But product management is about what to create. So let's say you do really well in how to create that. You build something really high tech, you build something, very nice, works really well. But if that's something that the market doesn't want, if that's something that the user does not want, then it's not really useful, right? Then it just lies in your lab or lies in your backyard. So if you are really good at, understanding what should be created while having the skills of how to create that you are already building as a part of, your education at IIT Gandhinagar, then when both are done right, then you have a chance of creating exponential value where what you have created, it actually gets used out there in the world. And that's the, the most satisfaction that a creator can get, that, whatever you have created, someone else is using, someone else is, getting value out of it. And that is why learning how to create products is also very important. Again, you might have a question of, why to create value. That's more of a philosophical question. Probably, Professor Manjli's course might cover some of this. Moving on. So let's start with, what is product management? So what you would see on this slide is, some definitions of product management, and these are from some experienced product leaders and some influencers out there in the industry. And, these are very powerful. So let me, talk about them one by one. So the first line says that product management boils down to owning the vision, design, and execution of your product. So let's go about this one by one, right? What is the vision of a product? So when you are building a product, you envisage what that product would be. You envisage that who am I building this product for? So who is my target audience? What is their problem or need that I am trying to solve? How would I get this product out to that customer? And what would the new world look like where your product exists compared to what the existing world is? So that's your vision, right? Now, let's say you start with this vision, but again, this vision is on paper. This vision is in your mind. So now you have to actually design that entire product experience, that if you want to get to that new world, which has your product, sorry about that. So if you want to get to that new world, then how should your product be designed so that people get the benefit that you envisage from the product? So that is design. Now, let's say you have created a design of the product, but still the product is not out there, right? So now you have to actually get the entire execution done to ensure that whatever you have designed gets built, gets out there in the market and creates value out there. So this is the entire cycle of product management. If we go to the next line, it says that a product manager basically helps their team and company ship the right product to the users. So again, this seeing the first line in a much simpler way. And the last line talks about the role of a product manager is to discover a product that is valuable, usable, and feasible. Now, these three, words are also quite important. So when you create a product, it needs to be valuable definitely to the user, but it also needs to be valuable to the company or to the team that is creating the product, because if it's not really valuable to either of them, then it's not sustainable. Second is usable. So whatever you have created, is it usable by the users? Do your users get it? Can they use it and get value out of it? If this is not present, then the product is not successful. And the third is feasibility. So let's say you think about a product, let's take a random example, right, which is about teleportation. Now, again, very valuable to the company who creates this, to the users, again, usable also. But is this really feasible? I talked about an extreme example, but when you are creating products, you will always get this trade-off that, hey, there's something great that I want to create, but is it actually possible to create this with the resources that you have at hand? So this is product management. If I have to, put it in a Venn diagram, then as a product manager, you are generally at the center of, at the intersection of UX, tech, and business. So what UX here is user experience. So you are basically the voice of the user. You know what the user needs. You know what should be created for the user so that the user can get value out of the product. You also need to be in touch with business, because you need to understand that whatever you are creating, is there some value generated out of it? Is somebody willing to pay for it? Because eventually, if there is value getting created, then it should create value for the company, for the team as well. And then the third circle is around tech, that, okay, this product that you're thinking of has business value, has, this something that users want. And now, how do you use technology to basically create that product? So if you are building a product, then you would generally be at the intersection of all these three. This is an interesting comic that talks about the life of a product manager. So building products when you are, let's say, doing a group project of 4 or 5 people is a very different ball game from building products out there in the industry, right? When you are in the industry, there are millions of dollars at stake. There are market commitments that you have, and there are a lot of smart people in your organization who also have parallel goals. So a lot of product management is about getting the entire team together, selling the vision to the entire team, getting everybody on board, and build the product out. And sometimes it gets overwhelming, which this comic talks about. So now let's get down, to the gory details, right? Let's say you have an idea of designing a new product or a feature. Now, how do you go about doing that, right? And there are a list of questions or a list of things that you need to look at, and this is the process that you need to follow when you are designing this product. So the most important, I won't say the most important, but very important is who is the target user for your product. And you need to really nail this very well. And this is a mistake that I have done in my past experiences, is that I have an idea that this should be created, but I don't know who this should be created for. Or I would think that, okay, everybody will use this. But this is a pitfall generally, because if you start off creating a product that works for everybody, then it will actually end up working for nobody, because you have not really gone down to the user persona. You have not really gone down to that particular user who might get value of this product. And you have basically created a hodgepodge of features which nobody really finds useful. So getting a right target user, a right user persona is very important. Once you know that, okay, this is my user persona, then you need to get into, what are the needs and problems of the target user that you are solving. And again, getting to know a target user becomes very important, because unless you know a target user, you don't know whose needs or problems you are getting out to solve for, right? So once you know that, hey, this is my user, you need to spend a lot of time with that user, understand that user's motivations, understand what the user does today, why the user does something today, to get to know the needs and problems of the user so that you can have a shot at solving them. The next step is basically, now, how is your product solving the user's need or problem? So you identified that, hey, XYZ is my user, and ABC are those users' needs or problems in life, and I want to solve them. Now you have to basically create the product design to understand that, hey, how will whatever I create solve for these users' needs and problems? The next step becomes prioritization. So when you set out doing the first three things, you will end up having, let's say, 15 features that you want to build into your product, right? But if you get into a real world scenario, you don't have the resources to build everything. So let's say you don't have the money, or let's say you don't have enough team members who can code, or let's say you don't have enough time, like you need to get something out in 3 months, 6 months, and so on, right? So what you need to do is you have to prioritize really ruthlessly to get something called the MVP, or the minimum viable product. That, hey, if this is my user and these are that user's needs or problems, what is the minimum thing that needs to be built so that whatever is the problem gets solved 80%. So you might not solve 100% of the problem, but what is that least thing that you can build so that most of the problem gets solved? And the next thing is, let's say you identified this minimum viable product. Now you also need to understand that how do you validate it? So I had an hypothesis that, okay, of this 15 features that need to go into the product, these 5 should go into the minimum viable product. Now this is still something in your mind, right? Or in your team's mind. How do you go about validating that this actually works? The next step is, let's say you build the minimum viable product. Now, how do you acquire users or customers, right? The next is, let's say you acquired users or customers, but how do you make money? Because unless you make money, you are dead. And the next step is, what metrics do you track to define success? So when you are building a product, this actually need not come last. It actually needs to come right at the top, that you identify that, okay, if I'm building this product and if I get it out to the user's hands, how do I know if it's successful or not? And this needs to be very strongly defined, very well thought out metrics to understand if what you have built is working or not working. So this is generally the process that you follow for creating products. Now, again, there's a lot of theory, right? So what would be interesting to do here is, let's go through a design exercise where we design a hypothetical product, go through each of these steps and see, how you think about each of these steps. And the reason we are doing this design exercise as well is that I want this talk to be something that, ends up being helpful to you in the future as well. So if we go through this design exercise, you learn how to do such design exercises, product design exercises, and then you can probably do it in your free time or do it with your friends at IIT Gandhinagar or somebody who is interested in creating a product with you. So the exercise that we are, doing is basically design an ATM for children. you have ATMs out there in the world. Adults use it. Let's say somebody comes and tells you, let's say a bank comes and tells you that, hey, my ATMs are not really useful for children, and can you design a ATM for children for me? Now, if we take this as the problem statement, then again, we already talked about all the questions that we need to answer and to design a product that children would like to use to get money out of an ATM, right? And again, when I'm talking about this entire design exercise, I'm imagining a pre-COVID or a post-COVID scenario where things are back to normal. Again, what we talk about here might not be applicable right now. So let's start with the first question, right? In our entire design exercise, which says that who is the target user for the product? So the way we define the target user for this particular product is school-going children aged 5 to 15 years in India. Now it's actually, so you would see that this is a well-defined target audience, but it's actually possible to define it even further. I have not done for this exercise, but you could also define it further, saying that, hey, a product ATM for kids 5 to 10 years old would be very different from an ATM for kids who is 10 to 15 years old. Or you could say that an ATM for kids in a tier 1 city like Mumbai or a Delhi might be very different from an ATM for kids in a tier 3 city or a village in India. So it's actually possible to go much deeper in a user persona or a target user. We are staying broad here, but I just wanted to call this out. So why have we taken a 5 to 15 year range here? Because 5 years is old is when children generally start going to school. They get into the first standard, and often they need to carry money for lunch, or they need to carry money for trips and so on. And why is the upper bound at 15 years? The upper bound is at 15 years because after 15 years, you might actually get a real debit card and start using an ATM. Or it could also be that you now have a mobile phone which you can use to do transactions. So let's say we start with this target user. But is this the only target user? So this is now, if you are new, then this is a pitfall that you can get into. So you might think that, hey, I'll create a product for kids, but you create that product and it doesn't really work because you did not look at all the potential target users, right? So the parents of these children are also target users for this product. And these are the people who would actually give money to the kids, who will actually probably create that account for the kids, or who might actually be the user that you want to acquire. And then the parent would actually acquire the actual user who is the kid who is using the ATM. So you need to look at parents and what are their needs as well. And also this product cannot succeed until the needs of both of these target users is satisfied. So considering this, now we come to the next step into the product design exercise, right? Which is, you are saying that what are the needs and problems of the target user here. So if you are basically creating an ATM for children, then what are the needs of children that your product might satisfy? And we are actually coming at it the wrong way, where we are saying that this is the product and this is the need, but you might actually approach it from a bottom-up way as well, that okay, these are the children, and I need to understand what are their problems, what are their needs, and then understand what is the product that needs to be built for them. So some of the needs of children could be that they need to withdraw money for school lunches or trips. So if they have a lunch break and they want to buy something from the school canteen, then they might need money. Or they are going on a day trip which needs them to pay a couple of ₹100, and for that they need to withdraw money. Or it could be that they want to buy books or games or some clothing and they need money for that. Or it could also be for very recreational purposes, like after school they want to go to the movies, or they just want to get some ice cream with friends. So these are needs of children to get money. Now let's talk about the needs of parents. A parent's need is that they want to teach their kids basic financial management, and that's why a lot of parents also give pocket money to their children, right? That this month you will get this much money. Now you figure out how to manage that. So this can be also a way for parents to teach their children how to basically take ownership of the money that you have, how to withdraw money whenever you want, how to use it whenever you want. So that is one need. Second need could be that the child should have access to money in case of an emergency. So let's say there is a medical emergency and the child needs, let's say, 1,000 rupees. Now in the current world, there is no way for the child to get that money. Can this ATM create solve that problem where in cases of emergencies the child can have money. And the third need of a parent could be that there needs to be some controls. So a parent should be able to say that, okay, I can add this much money to my child's bank account, or I can withdraw money if I want to, and I can also track where this money is actually getting used. So these are the different needs of children or parents that you could be targeting for creating an ATM for children. Now, considering this need, so now you know that who is the target user. Now you know that what are the problems or needs of the target user that your product might solve for. Now when you're designing an ATM, now you also need to look at what are some of the considerations that you need to take for your target user, or what are some of the constraints that you need to take for your target user. So if I talk about children, right? So now how are they different from an adult using an ATM? So one is they are very, very basic thing is that they are short in height. So a short child might not be able to use an ATM. Children generally need money in small denominations. So if you create an ATM for them where they get a 2,000 rupee note, then it doesn't really help them because they won't get change for it. And it's a safety risk as well. The third thing could be that children might not understand how ATMs work. So here you are looking at a 6-year-old kid. Now, this kid hardly has some understanding of money. What is an ATM? They probably don't even know. But they might just understand that, okay, this is a place that I can go to if I want to get my lunch money. Fourth thing could be that they might not be able to read. So a 6-year-old, a lot of them might be able to read, but you can't really go with that assumption. So you need to design your product keeping this constraint or consideration in mind. The fifth thing could be that an adult can be expected to keep an ATM card safe, remember the PIN. Can a child be expected to have the same responsibility? So what if the child loses the ATM card, or what happens if he or she has the ATM card but doesn't remember the PIN? So then in that case, the product is not useful. And the last consideration that is again very important is this is vulnerable to theft and safety issues. So as an adult, you are not so vulnerable, but there can be issues where, you have a ATM for children and somebody might just force the children to get money out of that and steal that money. So this becomes a safety issue as well. So now you have the target user, you have the needs and problems of the target user, and now you have the user considerations and constraints as well. Now the next step is basically, now you are actually coming to, defining what the product looks like, right? And how is the product solving for the user's needs and problems. So now let's go at this laundry list of features that we have that can actually be built into this ATM for children. So the first thing should be that, ATM should be 3 to 4 feet in height, and the key functions of the ATM should be accessible to a 5-year-old child. So very basic, solves for the constraint of kids being short in height. The next one is that this ATM should have touchscreen controls, should have visual feedback, visual cues, bright colors, should have an audio onboarding so that a kid understands what the ATM is all about. The kid understands how to use that particular product. A user experience or a UX for a child is supposed to be very, very different from a user experience for an adult, because the adult has a lot more context. The adult has a much better attention span. The adult has probably used that product before, whereas this is something that the child is looking at for the first time. So you want to design a product that is similar to the experiences that the child has had before. And what are the kind of experiences that children have before? They have played with toys. They have played with games on the tablet of their parents. So can you basically make the user experience of this ATM in a way that they understand and they are, and hence they find it easy to use. One exploration that you can have here is that you can probably have cartoon characters in the UI of the ATM so that, you can keep the child's attention. So this is one more feature or capability that you need to have into this product, right? The third feature that you might look at is that the ATM should have voice commands in multiple languages. So this is again important when you are designing a product for India, is that not all children might know English, right? So this multiple language thing might even go into the controls of the ATM, that what if a child only knows Tamil, or what if a child only knows Marathi, then how do they use this product? So can you have actually voice commands? So let's say you know what language the child knows, and you also know that the child cannot read, but you know that the child can speak. Can you have voice commands in multiple languages for the child to actually talk to the ATM and get money out of it? And this can come from, again, user research. So personally, I have seen that children are very good at, talking to a Alexa or talking to a Google Home, and they actually start talking to that machine like it's a friend, right? So can you create a similar experience here? Now we had one more constraint, right? That the child might not keep the ATM card safe, or the child might, forget the PIN. Now, what can you do to solve for this problem? You can have fingerprint based identification. So there is no real need to carry an ATM. You can just know that, okay, if this is the fingerprint, then this is the account, and you can actually get money out of it. Let's say you need two-factor authentication, right? Just like you have OTPs. This can also be solved in multiple ways, that you can basically show photos to a child that, okay, of these 4 photos, which one do you recognize? And one of those photos could be, some friend of that child, or a toy that the child recognizes, or so on. Another way to do 2FA could also be that you can basically do face recognition. That's also a technology that's available. So this solves for the entire constraint of, not having an ATM card, not remembering the PIN. The next one is something that we spoke about, that the ATM should give out cash in small denominations. So it should give 10, 20, 50 rupee or 100 rupee notes instead of, 500 or 2000 rupee notes. And it should also have withdrawal limits that can be set by a parent. So a parent should be able to set a limit that, okay, per day, my child cannot withdraw more than 100 rupees out of the ATM. And this could be controls that a parent might want to have for safety reasons or any other reasons, right? And this should also have an option to revoke this. So we spoke about use case in terms of emergency, right? That let's say I need 1000 rupees because I just fell down and I need to go to the hospital. In this case, the parent should have a way to revoke the withdrawal limits that they have set as well, so that the kid can get more money. And the last one is that the ATM should have a SOS option to help the child in case of a theft or some kind of safety event. So is there a single button, or is there something that I can say so that immediately authorities get to know, or my parents get to know that, okay, there is some issue happening here, and somebody can come to the help of the child in case of a theft or a safety event. So we looked at the user, we looked at their constraints, we looked at their needs, and let's say we came with this list of features that could help solve those needs. Again, I would like to say that this is non-exhaustive, because there are a lot of innovative ideas that you might have, a lot of ways in which you might want to solve the same problem. But let's say we start with this list. Now, again, this comic talks about, why prioritization is important. So, you can just read through it. And and the reason I, talk about this is what often happens is that, you are a team of 3-4 people, you talk to users and say that, hey, I want to build a world-class product. And you would start thinking that a product is a list of features. A product is not really a list of features. The simplest products actually have very less features. So a very good example that I can give is of WhatsApp. If you had used WhatsApp, 5 years back, it had none of the features that all the other messaging products had. It did not have stickers. It still does not have a great functionality of stickers, and still, it works best, right? It's the top messaging product in the world. So you need to understand what are those key requirements and only prioritize those, so that your product is, one, easy to use for the user. The user does not get lost in the complexity of a lot of features. And the second is that it's cheaper for you to build as well, right? So a product that has 10 features is much more expensive to create in terms of money and time than a product that has 4 to 5 features. This comic talks about, how sometimes product development is treated as a democracy, and that creates problems. So you need to be really strong at understanding what should go into the product. This is not a democracy. You are not really getting a list of features from different people. And this could be users as well, right? Tomorrow, if you go and talk to 10 parents and 10 children, they might tell you that, okay, I want XYZ, I want ABC. And you might just create this list and you would go out building that product. But that's not something that you should be doing, right? It's your job to know what to listen to and what not to listen to, figure out what is useful and what is not. So then a question could be that how to prioritize. So, we came with a list of features for an ATM for children. Now, how to prioritize what to build, what not to build. And there are multiple frameworks to use here. I'll first talk about the RICE framework, which is something that we use extensively at Swiggy when we are prioritizing features. So basically, RICE stands for reach, impact, confidence, and effort. So reach talks about how many, so let's say if you create this feature, how many users will it actually reach to? Will it reach to your entire user base, or it will reach to a part of the user base, and so on? So if I have to take an example of Swiggy here, let's say you create a product that works for restaurants which have dishes above 1,000 rupees. So it works only for premium restaurants, that you might get some special treatment there, or you might get a extra cake there. Now, the reach for this product is not really the entire user base of Swiggy. The reach of this product is only those users who have the spending power, or who generally, order food from such restaurants. So that is reach. The next is impact. So let's say if you create this product, what is the impact that this is building, that this is creating in the product? So does this basically get me more users to use the product, or is it those users end up spending more time on my product because I build this feature, or do they spend more money if I build this feature? That becomes impact. Third is confidence. So confidence could be that, what if I say that I want to build this feature in the next X months, what is my confidence of actually being able to build it? And here a lot of factors come in. Do you have the technical expertise to build it? Does this technology even exist to build it, and so on, right? So that becomes confidence. And the last one is effort, that how much effort would you actually spend in building this particular feature. So the way you generally prioritize using the RISE framework is that you take reach, impact, confidence, and effort, score them on high, medium, low. You can actually also give them a numeric score in 0 to 5. And you then use a formula which is reach into impact into confidence divided by effort to get a score for, how important is this feature for your product. And again, this is very mathematical and very subjective. It's mathematical, but it's not really that objective, because the subjectivity actually lies in how you score each of these, right? How you score the reach, impact, confidence, and effort before building the product. So it is a subjective call as well as an objective call, and being able to do this right is something that you should have built as a skill as a product manager, right? So this is the RISE framework. Then there is the MVP philosophy, which is the minimum viable product. I already spoke about this in an earlier slide. So this is the least amount of effort that you can do to validate if your product is useful. So what is the least amount of effort that you can do to understand if an ATM for children is useful to children, is useful to parents? And that's what you should start off building. You should not build the entire list that we spoke about. How do you identify what are those, if you want to define an MVP, or if you want to apply the RISE framework, how do you understand, how to score RISE? Or how do you understand, of the 10 features that we spoke about, what are those 3 or 4 that are really important? And this is where it comes to understanding the users really well. So conduct user research to identify the most important needs. A lot of the hypotheses can actually be validated without building anything. So zero code. And I would like to give an example here. So when we were building Lumos, which was the IoT product, we, sometime in the way we understood that, hey, this does not work. And that's when we started looking for pivots, that can we build something different in the IoT industry, which is more useful, which can be successful. And one idea that we were looking at that time was that, can we create beacons? And these are Bluetooth beacons. And the way beacons generally work is that beacons have a range. So let's say a beacon has a range of 200 meters. Now, anybody who comes within the range of the beacon and has the Bluetooth on their phone on can actually get a notification. So how is this useful? A MACD can have this beacon in the restaurant. And if you are within 200 meters of MACD, then they can give you a coupon. Or let's say you go to some mall in Ahmedabad, and there is a new store that has started. They want to let you know that, hey, there is this offer coming, or these are the great products that that store has. As soon as they know that you come near to that store, they can actually send some communication to you through a notification that, hey, check this out, or use this discount, and so on. So a lot of potential use cases that can be valuable to businesses and also valuable to customers, because there's a good way to target a customer, because you get that notification only when you are near to that store. And we thought that, okay, this is something that we can explore, but we had already burnt our hands once. So we had already built the AC automation product and realized that this does not work. So this time we took a different path, that, hey, let's not build the product first. Let's actually validate this without spending any money, without writing even a single line of code. So what we did was, we just, took a box, and that box was just a black box. It had nothing inside. We took that box and started going to malls in Ahmedabad. So we went to Himalaya Mall. I don't know if you guys visit Himalaya Mall anymore, but that used to be frequent hangout for us when we were at IIT. So we went to Himalaya Mall and we started talking, going shop by shop. So we would go show them this box. We would tell them that, hey, we have already built this. This is what it does. Would you want to try this out? Would you want to buy this? And that was a great way to actually validate if businesses find it useful, right? Because we thought that it's useful, but we didn't really know if the market thought it's useful. We started speaking to customers or people roaming in Himalaya Mall that, hey, would you like it if you get a notification from a nearby shop that tells you about the offers and so on. And this entire exercise was eye-opening, because what we found from stores was that it's good, but I don't know if it's that useful. I don't know if people have their Bluetooth on. I don't know if I want to pay for it, right? So this clearly says that, okay, if since you are going to them, talking to them in an excited way, they might say that, I'll take it. But if you actually say that, okay, now shell out 5,000 rupees for it, and then you face a no. Similarly, we spoke to customers and we found out that they already find notifications very irritating, and they in no way want another product that will give them more notifications. They want to basically find out or discover stuff on their own instead of getting this irritating notification. So, and that's when we decided, okay, this is not something we should be building. And this was a very zero code way of doing it. All it took was 3 days of our effort, whereas the earlier product had taken, some 4 months to build and a few lakh rupees spent in building the product. So this is where, conducting user research, validating hypothesis beforehand becomes very, very important. Let's talk about how this can be done for this particular product that we're talking about, right? Let's say you want to validate a ATM for children with zero code or with minimal code. Now, one way that I can think about it is that instead of creating an ATM, can you actually go to a school, set up a desk there, talk to some parents, talk to, to the school staff to let you set up that desk, talk to some parents to, say that, okay, give us 100 rupees, we'll top it up with another 100 rupees, and your child can basically get money whenever they want. Now you set up a desk there, you don't really build an ATM, you keep some cash with you, and you build a very simple iPad app or a tablet app, which basically helps a child log in, select how much money they want, and press OK. And if the child is able to enter the stuff that you want, then you basically give the cash, manually to that child. This is basically doing the same thing that your ATM is supposed to do, but there is a person here instead of a product doing it, and there is a very basic app that you have created. Now you might say, do I even need to create the app? Because there's a cost to creating that app as well, right? So can you do it with zero code? Now, a way to doing it with zero code is that whoever are the parents that you spoke to, you tell those parents that, hey, this is the code that will get money for your kid. And can you give this chit or this code? Or it can be a card, a visiting card sort of thing. Can you give this to your child and tell the child that whenever he or she wants money, he or she can come to the desk and basically show this card and they'll get money. Again, same use case you are solving. You are just solving it in a very hacky way. And I know that this doesn't scale. If you want to, do this in 1,000 schools, you can obviously not do this, but that's not your intent, right? You first need to understand that, is this something that is useful to children? Is this something that is useful to parents? And that's when you can do it with zero code. We talked about building prototypes to check usability. So the prototype here could be the tablet app that we spoke about. That is the child able to understand, how to operate the ATM, where the ATM UI is not on the ATM screen, but it's actually on the tablet screen, and you can basically validate that very quickly. One more thing that I would want to talk about, since we are talking about prioritization, is that saying no and knowing when to say no. These are the most important traits of a product manager. And the reason I say these are most important is that these are, again, a single decision of whether to add a feature or not can be a make or break for your product. Second is saying no is hard. When you are, let's say, building a product and your lead engineer comes and tells you that, hey, this is a superb feature and we should build this, or let's say your top customer comes and tells you that I'm not really liking your product and build this, then I like it. Might be true, that feature might be useful, but if it's not, then saying no is very hard. And sometimes they might be telling you the right thing, and you might get into this habit of saying no to everyone, but not knowing when to say no. So these are really important, traits to develop as a PM. Coming back to our exercise on the ATM for children, right? Now we had this list. How do we prioritize it? And we can even do more prioritization than what I have done here. But let's start as an example. So we said that we want to create an ATM for children. Now the biggest hurdle that I see here is that, this physical infrastructure, right? How do you build physical infrastructure? Let's say you want to do this in 100 cities. Would you actually go and buy land in 100 cities and set up an ATM, even if you are a bank? You basically need to find out a way to use the existing ATM infrastructure work to be able to make this product successful. So that's a big constraint or a hurdle on effort, right? So what we basically should try to do is that, without making changes to my ATM infrastructure, can I basically build something to validate this quickly? So instead of building a shorter ATM, can I have a removable wooden step in each ATM, so that whenever a kid wants to use it, the step can be kept in front of the ATM, and the kid basically gets that height to be able to use the ATM. So solved without zero code. The next thing is, we talk about how the UX should be really good and should be something that the child understands for the child to be able to use the ATM. Now, my intuition is that this is very important for this product to work. So I've kept it as a part of the prioritized list. But again, this can be a huge debate where you might say that, no, it's not useful. And it's actually good to get into those debates. The reason I've kept it is, again, this is doable using software. And this can be done in the existing ATMs as well. The third feature was around voice commands, right? I'm saying this should not be as a part of the MVP. The UX should be good enough for the kid to be able to use the product. You can have visual cues if the kid does not understand. So if the kid does not understand what is withdrawing, then can you have a picture where somebody is withdrawing money, and that helps the kid understand. So we are seeing that voice commands remove out of the V0 of the product. The next one where we talk about was fingerprint-based identification, changes in two-factor authentication. Again, huge changes in the ATM infrastructure. We are saying, let's not do this. Let's teach children to keep the card safe and remember PIN. Now, again, this is a hypothesis, right? We don't know if this will work, but we are saying that this is something that is high on effort, low on confidence. Let's not do this. The next thing that we talk about was giving out cash in small denominations, having withdrawal limits. Again, this can be done using software. This can be done in existing ATMs. So, let's keep it, because there's something that is important for a parent. There's something that is important for the usability for the child, and even important for safety. The last thing that we had was the ATM should have SOS options to help the child in case of theft or a safety event. Again, do we actually need to build this feature, right? Existing ATMs already have security guards. Can we leverage those security guards to help the kid in case something wrong happens? So let's say this is the prioritized list of features that we want to go with into building this ATM. Now, what's the next step here, right? So the next step here would be that you would actually design this product. You would create the designs for this, and this could be UI, UX designs. This could be mechanical designs, and so on. You would actually create this product, go to a few schools, go to a few users, test it out, and then see if it works or not. Now, the next step could be, so let's say, you build this MVP, right? And you want to basically see if it works, if it scales. One caveat that I want to talk about here is that, I spoke a lot about prioritization. I spoke a lot about cutting features. But when I'm talking about the MVP, I'm not really talking about the final product here. So your MVP might not solve for all the problems of your customer. It might not be scalable as well. So your next step is that once you build the MVP and you first validate the key assumptions. So I have some key assumptions, which if they are false, the product will definitely not work. I just validate that with my MVP, and then I make all the improvements that I talked about into the product, because now I know that this product will work, and I gradually basically making those improvements, validating each of the improvement and going ahead. So that's a complete cycle. You basically create a new hypothesis, you validate it with customers, and you again iterate. And that's how your product keeps on getting better with time. And you would see this with all products, right? Facebook, if you had used 10 years ago versus what you use now, completely different, right? Instagram you used 10 years ago, you use right now, completely different. And this has all happened with a very thoughtful process on, what to build, how to validate it, and how to do iterations. Now, the next step is, how to acquire users and make money. So again, talking about some examples here for the use case or the exercise that we're talking about. So how do you acquire users for ATM for children? You partner with banks, and what is in it for the bank to do this? There's a value added service that can be there for parents. So if this was a big enough use case for parents, or if this was a big enough problem for parents, they would value a bank which provides this service, and that's why banks would want to have this service. Another reason for banks to have this is they are getting young users early. That, if I get someone when they are 14 years of age, then I have them, for a much longer lifetime. So that could be something for in it for the bank. Second thing could be you could partner with schools to get students, and this could be around, the school wanting to teach financial management to students early, or just making the process simple for kids to get money, so that kids don't have to carry money all the time, which could get stolen, which has safety issues and so on. And then there could be a lot of marketing and referral studies, which is basically parents talking to each other if they find the service useful, or kids in a school talking to each other. So one kid is using this ATM and the other kid wants money. So he also gets to know that, hey, there's something that I can use, goes to his parent and says that I want this. The things that I talked about here, these are like the tip of the iceberg in acquiring users, because, growth is a, 1 hour talk in itself, but these are some basic things that you can do to acquire users. Similarly, making money. How do you make money? You have a monthly fee for parents who want their kids to use this feature, or you get a transaction level commission from the bank that every time a child withdraws 100 rupees, I get a 1 rupee cut. Again, not an exhaustive list of ways to make money from this product, giving some examples here. Monetization, again, is a huge field in itself. So this is basically the end of the design exercise. And again, I would reiterate the process that we spoke about, that is getting to know the target user for your product, getting to know their needs and problems really well, then designing a product that solves for those needs and problems, prioritizing it, knowing how to acquire users or customers, knowing how to make money, and basically defining what are the metrics that you would track to define success. Now we spoke about, an idea that you had, and we, went about creating this entire, product which can solve for this problem, right? But I would like to talk about a pitfall that we got into, and a lot of PMs get into, or for example, for that matter, a lot of teams get into as well, is that you basically have something called as idea euphoria. That you got this idea and you think that this will change the world. This is the next billion-dollar idea. Obviously, people will find this useful, right? And then you again immediately start going into the creation process. And you might also get really good inputs from the process that we use right now, right? So let's say if you created a product that only 1,000 people in India can use, and you spoke to 100 of those 1,000 people, they told you, boss, this first class, I'll pay money for this, well and good, right? And you would go and make the product. But can you actually build a business from a product that only 1,000 people can use? So this is where it's actually important to understand and answer the question, is that would you build this in the first place? So in case this becomes successful, is it big enough for the company to exist? Is it big enough for the business to exist? And that's a question that you basically start to answer before going into this entire exercise. I won't spend a lot of time into the specifics of how to do this as well, because again, there's a big field in itself. But if you want to know more about this, learn more about top down and bottom up market sizing. So if, let's say, there's a new market that you want to get into with a product, then how do you basically size the overall what is the total market, and what part of the market can you capture with your product, and what is the kind of money that you can make. Similarly, there's a bottom-up way of doing it as well. The third thing that you would want to look into and understand really well is that, is this a drug for the user or a vitamin for the user? If it's a drug for the user, that's when they really need it, they'll pay money for it. If it's a vitamin, then you have to really work very hard for the user to, buy vitamins, because they are not having any pain right now. You are basically selling them that if you take this, then your life will improve in the future. And humans don't work that way. Humans don't think about future benefits so much as they think about solving for existing pain or solving for a current benefit. And that's why it's always better to build drugs rather than vitamins in terms of products. I already spoke about, talk to customers and partners to understand their needs and motivations, validate hypotheses, learn more about user research. So this is also a very important skill to build, that when you are talking to users, there's a way to talk to users. And you don't just go to a user and ask them, will you use, this is my product, will you use it? Because that's not, you are basically biasing the user. You need to understand what are the needs and motivations of the user. And there are some very specific questions that you need to ask, a very specific flow of talking to the user to get to understand, what that user's needs are. A very key example that I can give here is that never ask leading questions. So never ask that, do you find this useful, right? Because that's a leading question. You might ask that, what is the use of this product for you? And that's not really a leading question. So these are some things that you can learn about user research, and this is something that, again, you can read up more on the internet. Let's talk about, what are the key questions that I would ask around, would you build this in the first place for the ATM for kids example, right? The key questions that I should ask is that, if this is successful, how many kids would use this in India? What are the number of transactions that they would do in a month? How much money can I make from building this entire product? The second question that I would ask is that, would banks make changes to ATMs and ATM software? Are there any regulatory or legal hurdles into building this in the first place? Third question that I would ask is that, do parents really care about such a solution? Are they okay with giving cash to kids instead? And the entire problem that we are thinking about is just a hypothetical problem that actually does not exist in the world. So these are, again, the key questions I should ask before even getting into a product design exercise. Having said this, so now let's talk about how to get better at building products. So we already went through a design exercise. We talked about what you should look at, what are the pitfalls that you should avoid. Now you might ask that, okay, I am interested in building products in the future. How do I get better at it? So one basic caveat, all that we are talking about right now is theory. You don't really get good at building products unless you actually build products. And experience is gold here. Build something, test it out with actual users, and you would learn way more than you would learn from either this talk or reading about books on product management or reading blogs on the internet, right? So that's P0. What are good ways to develop a good product intuition? So review the products that you use daily. So just take out your phone, see what are the top 10 apps that you use daily. See, what do you like about them? Why do you use that app? What is the user experience that you are really liking about that app? Next thing that you should say is, what do you dislike? Are there some things that you have a problem while using the product, or you see some kinds of users having that problem, and that's something that you could be disliking about the product. You could also look at thinking, why have they been built in a particular way? So you might think that, hey, this flow does not make sense. This flow is not the best flow for me. But then you need to think about, why that product was built that way, why that flow was built that way, where there are constraints while building that flow that makes it suboptimal. So get into the feet of the person who actually created that product and try to think about why something has been built in a particular way. The next thing that you could also talk about is, what would you change about this product? If, let's say, you already saw some things that you dislike, right? What would you change about those things to make it a better product? So these are ways to develop better product intuition. You can go into product design exercises. So we talked about designing an ATM for children, right? There are multiple different hypothetical product design exercises that you can go into, like, how would you build a cycle sharing product for IIT Gandhinagar students? Or in the COVID scenario, how do you create a video calling product for virtual parties? So your friends are in 10 different towns now. If you want to do a party, what kind of product would you build? Or a note keeping app for students, or a virtual bookshelf for kids, and so on. And the last thing that you could do is, again, I spoke about how it's very important to actually get experience, but it's still useful to read. And you could read about building products from product leaders or influencers. So some of the people that I really follow is, again, a product leader called Shreyash Doshi from Stripe. Then there is Paul Graham, or you can read about blogs on SVPG, which is the Silicon Valley product group. There are a lot of books that you can read about on product management as well. You can just Google about them. The last thing that I would want to talk about, and this was a question, this is a question that I often get from my juniors, is that how do you get into product management? And there are different ways in which people become product managers. So I would just talk about those paths. And if you want to really become a product manager, then you could follow either any of these paths. One caveat that I would want to talk about before I talk about this slide is that you need to really know why you want to become a product manager. Sometimes it might seem very glamorous from the outside, but you actually need to know why you are the right person to do this, because this is not for every kind of person. Not all personalities work really well for product management. So you need to know if you are a good fit for this. Now, let's say if you know that you are a good fit for this, then one thing is that this is not a job right out of undergrad. So if you are doing BTech right now, you won't really do product management after you graduate, unless you are, building your own product or doing your own startup. In that case, there's no one else to build it. Another thing that I have realized is that it's better to build core skills before becoming a product manager, because you are basically creating products with a team when you are a product manager. And if you don't know how to create, then you don't know the constraints in creation. You don't get the respect from your team. You basically cannot talk in the same language as your team when you are building a product, right? So become a great developer, or become a great user experience designer, a data scientist, analyst, or become good at selling products, or become good at getting growth on products, and then become a product manager, because now you have some core skills that would help in building that product. And those core skills would also help you take product decisions really well. For example, if you know how to code really well, then you know that what is feasible and what is faster to build versus what is not so fast. If you are good at sales, then you would know how to sell this product, how to get the first 100 users for this product. And these are great skills to have for any product manager. So what I would suggest is that if you are doing a BTech right now, spend a couple of years and basically spend some time in the industry, become good at some core skill, and then you can think about moving in this kind of career path. And this you would see through the different ways of getting into product management as well. So some of the key paths that I see in my product management colleagues as well is that there are 4 paths. So one is you can do an MBA and then get a PM role. Again, these are not the MBAs that you do right out of BTech in IIMs. These, if let's say you get 2-3 years of experience and then do an MBA, then you have a good chance of getting into a PM role post an MBA. There are ways of getting into PM roles right after graduation as well. And this is called APM role, which is the Associate Product Manager. And these are generally training related roles. So for example, Flipkart used to have a APM program. Again, these are very selective. So Flipkart used to take 8 people out of India and put them into this APM program, where they would actually spend 2 years training these folks to be great product managers. So they would move them around in different parts of the company, and basically they groom them to become a product manager, because they also know that coming right out of an engineering degree, you don't really know how to build products, and that's something that you build as you get experience. So there are ways to getting into it right after BTech, but very rare, especially in India. But if you do an MBA with experience, then you can get into a PM role. Similarly, you can switch to a PM role within a large organization. So let's say you're working with a large organization in any of the roles that I spoke about, right? Code, design, marketing, etc. If you have an interesting product, then you can actually move to a PM role within that organization by building relationships that, hey, this is something that I'm interested in. Can I give it a shot? And that's something that is generally possible. Or you could join a startup that needs early product managers. So generally, bigger companies have very set standards on what is the kind of experience that they want from PMs, or what are the kind of educational qualifications that they want from PMs. Startups are generally don't have this strong thresholds. So if they see you as someone who is very interested in products, has the raw potential in becoming a good product manager, then they might actually give you a chance into building their product. So that's another way of doing it. And the last way is basically moving to a PM role post acquisition or shutdown of your own startup. So this is something that I did, and I know a lot of my colleagues or my seniors and juniors from IIT Gandhinagar who have taken this kind of route into product management. So yes, these are the different ways of getting into product management. There is obviously the way of starting your own startup, in which case you are not just a product manager, but a lot of things. And this brings me to the end of my talk. I would be happy to take questions now. Okay.
Yash, thank you so much. I think we have a few questions. If you could, address them. Shubham, Nagasai, and you have Nisarg. Can you see the questions?
Yes. So let me start with the first question. For user research, is it better to form assumptions before and just test those with the users, or go with a open mind and form opinions earlier for the product or process to build? So you do have some hypothesis when you actually go into user research, but you don't talk about this hypothesis with the user. So whenever you go for user research, you generally have a brief of questions that you want to cover, but that brief is again not very strong, right? So it's something like a guideline of how you would talk to the user, and the kind of questions that you would have in the brief would be to validate the assumptions that you have. But as you talk to the user, you might it's not really a controlled conversation, right? So the user might say something completely different or go on a different track, and this was something that you hadn't thought about or you hadn't assumed about. Then that's also something that you still want to talk to the user about. So yes, you go with assumptions and create your questions for user research based on that, but it's still a open conversation. On user research, I am paraphrasing a statement by Henry Ford. When you ask a user what does he need, he'll ask for the fastest horse rather than asking for a car. So how can you make a user envision the product's capability? Okay, this is a very interesting question that is asked in a lot of product management conferences as well. So again, this is a very basic pitfall of user research, right? When you go and do user research, you don't ask the user what does he need, or you basically try to understand what are his needs. So the user doesn't tell you how you solve for those needs. The user tells you what his needs are. So if I take this example of horse versus car, right? The user's need is speed. The user's need is not getting into a car or getting on top of a horse, right? So if you are able to understand that the user wants to get from place A to B fast, what would be the best way of creating that? And Henry Ford had the technology to build a car, so he built a car. But if, let's say, you did not have the technology, but you were great at horse breeding, then you might have created faster horses, right? So there are multiple ways of going about it. So understand the user's need. Don't ask the users for solutions. It's your job to come up with solutions. What skills are demanded for a PM role? So again, multiple skills. If I have to basically list them out, I spoke about some of the skills during the talk as well. So one is that again, you need to have great product sense, and product sense is basically a lot of the things that I spoke about in the conversation. You need to be, you need to have great analytical capabilities, because a lot of product decisions actually get taken on data. So when I am taking a product decision on a feature in Swiggy, I actually have data from hundreds of thousands of users, and I need to know how do I make sense of that data. So you need to be great at analytical skills. You need to have a business sense as well. Basically, you need to understand that if I build this, how does it change my company's revenue, or how does this change my company's profit, or is it feasible from a business point of view? Like, if I had to give you a very extreme example, I should not, create a discount offer within Swiggy, which does not get me any new users or does not get me more orders from existing users, right? Because now my number of orders are the same, but I am just spending on discount, giving 30 rupees off to everyone without any benefit for the organization. So this is business sense. One more thing that you need to be good at is, again, I spoke about road mapping and prioritization. So you need to understand, how to build a roadmap for your product. How does your product look like? 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line? How do you do prioritization? What should you build now? What should you build later? And you need to be good at strategy as well. And strategy is again a very broad term to use, but you need to understand what is the competitive landscape, how is the market changing, how is the product that you are building right for the current market or the market in the future, what is the differentiation that your product is building, and so on. So this strategy. And the last skill that I would talk about is, tech understanding. When you are building a product, then you are working with engineers, you are working with data scientists, and a lot of different roles. If you don't understand tech, then you are, in a way lost, because you are making asks which are not feasible, or you don't know how to take decisions which are good both from a tech. Some of the skills that PMs are evaluated on. I hope that answers your question. Next question is by Nisarg Shah. Since there are no right answers while making product decisions, as a product manager, how do you evaluate product decisions on a day-to-day basis? So interesting question, Nisarg. And I think the very objective way of evaluating product decisions is with data. So any product that I have built on Swiggy has never been, or even for that matter, Myntra has never been rolled out without experimentation. So whenever we build products, we basically run A/B experiments on every product and understand that, if this is my current product, which is basically the control group, and this is my new product with the changes that I have made, is the new product actually bringing any benefit in terms of the metrics that I have defined for success? So this is something which is more of a process to evaluate if a product decision is right or wrong. But if, let's say, when I'm taking this product decision, I am taking a decision on investment, right? So I am also taking a decision on what experiments to build and what not to build. And this comes again from some of the things that I spoke about, right? If you know the user really well, then you develop product sense, product intuition in terms of, what is useful or what is not useful. Also, as you basically create more and more products, you build that, I don't have a great word for it, but intuition is probably a way to put it, but you build that sense that, this is a good product decision versus this is not. And that helps you basically decide what should you build in the first place and what should you experiment on in the first place. Once you've experimented, again, it's very easy to validate if it works or not. So hope that answers your question. What is the best way to take user insights in this COVID world right now, given that most interactions are virtual? Again, virtual interactions are the best way to get insights right now, because this is what is feasible today. I know it's difficult for a lot of roles. Sales is one of them, where you can't really go and sell things to people, and face-to-face interactions are much better there. Similarly, user research is something where if you are actually with the user, then you actually get to understand their body language, you get to understand their emotions really well. But again, we have to do with the tools and capabilities that we have right now, and hence virtual interactions are the only way to actually do research. The next question is, how good is the idea of creating the market? That is, when users didn't know they need this product. It's actually very hard to create a market, if I want to answer this question very practically, because if users don't know they need the product, and if it's not a big enough need that you are solving, then you will have to work really hard to sell your benefit, your product's benefit to users, and that selling takes a cost. So let's say one user using your product gets you 10 rupees, but you have to spend 30 rupees in informing that user, making the user aware of the benefit of the product. Then for every user that you are getting, you are spending 20 rupees. So it's necessary to have a base market in place which can build a sustainable business for you, and then then you can grow the market. So take the example of e-commerce for that matter, right? So e-commerce was there as a market, but not really well structured. So there were still products being sent to people through couriers, but it was a very small need. And there was the basic need of going somewhere and buying something. Now, what e-commerce did was basically brought this need online where you don't really need to go somewhere and you get the product at your doorstep. In some ways, creating a market, but the need was already there. And that's why it took time for a Flipkart to grow in India. But once Flipkart came, there was a market that was already in place. And that's when the future entrants in the market had a easier time either capturing that market or growing it further. Having said that, all the big tech companies in the world today are creating markets. So if I talk about e-commerce, less than 5% of India's retail happens online today. So 95% of the market is not really captured right now. And the Amazons, the Flipkarts, the Swiggies of the world are basically trying to create these markets. The next question is, do product managers need coding, designing, and people management skills? How would you rank the skills based on your experience? So product managers generally don't code, but they are involved in coding discussions, engineering design discussions, discussions on, so an engineer can come and tell you that, hey, I can do A versus B. A will take me 10 weeks, B will take me 30 weeks. And what should I do? Now, you need to understand that, what are the implications of doing A versus B? And if you are really good, then you can also say that, hey, can you do this C? I know that it doesn't solve for this feature that I have called out in my product, but I am okay with removing that feature and going with a C instead, which can be done in 5 weeks. So that's where that basic understanding of engineering becomes very useful. Do product managers need design skills? Again, you don't design. So generally you don't make unless you are in a startup, then it's a different scenario. But in a bigger company, you have a UX design team who basically makes the final designs that the customer sees. But you need to have basic design and user experience skills, because you are envisaging the user flow, right? That when user comes to your product, then he first does X, then does Y, and then does Z. So you need to be good at that design intuition. And as you actually grow into product management, a lot of times you don't become a creator, but you become an editor. So let's say you say that I want to build this product, and your design team went and created some designs of it. Now you need to be really good at understanding if this is the right design. You need to be good at critiquing that design and figuring out that, hey, I know you built this flow and you thought of this XYZ when you built this, but I think that if we do this slightly differently, then that might be more useful. And that's basically more around critiquing and editing than actually creating. But critiquing and editing needs even more understanding of the skill than creating that particular design or code. And the last thing is about, do product managers need people management skills? Not in the early years. So product managers generally become people managers 7-8 years into their product management journey, and this is something that you can learn with time, so not something that you need to start off with. Now, if I have to rank these skills, then I would put design first, then code, and then people management. But again, depends on the kind of product that you are building. If you are building something like Amazon Web Services, right, then you might, and again, I don't know if this group knows about Amazon Web Services, but if you are building that product, that's a very pure deep tech product, and there you might be better off being, having better coding skills versus designing, versus if you are building, let's say, a social media product in which the ranking changes. So very subjective, but generally it's design, then code, then people management. Thanks for the interesting talk. Can you tell us about an interesting project you worked on, and how did you go about it? Interesting part. I am not sure if we have the time to go about it, because again, that's a story which could go into 15-20 minutes. What you could do is you can, read up my blog on Lumos. It's on Medium. You can just search for Yash Kotak in Medium, and you can read about. There was a really interesting project that we built, and I've spoken about our journey and the learnings that we got from it. The next question is, how do you maintain communication with software developers? Like, do you specify the technology that can be used, or is it totally the task of the developer to take it forward? So you generally don't specify the technology that a developer uses. So you generally don't go into the how. So you basically trust your teams to be really great at what they do. So you don't tell a engineer how to engineer your product, or you don't tell a data scientist that, hey, use this model versus that. You go with them with your need, that okay, I want to build this product, and then you let them take the best decision in terms of how that product can be built. So your job is to give the requirements and basically give the what, and not meddle in the how. What are the questions we should ask to users generally? Can you illuminate this more? Again, Shashi, this is very subjective to the kind of user research you are doing, what is the kind of hypothesis that you are going with, and so on. So probably not the right forum to answer this question. I would suggest you read up more around how to do user research on the internet. You would get a lot of content on this. The next question is, in your experience so far, what has been the correlation in pilot results and final scaled up rollout results, and what factors to consider for a pilot? So again, this depends on how you have designed your pilot. So if I have to talk about pilots where you actually designed the product and then you are gradually scaling them up to users, then if you have enough significance, enough statistical significance in your experimentation, then you could expect the final scale up to get you the same impact that you had estimated from the pilot. However, if your pilot is something like an MVP where you have basically just build the basic stuff which does not scale, or build the basic stuff to validate your key assumptions, in that case your final rollout results might change based on what are the changes that you have made to the product when you have rolled it out. So I hope that answers your question. What factors to consider for a pilot? Again, this we spoke about during the talk, right? You identify the key needs and the key hypothesis that you have on how you are solving for that need. You identify the key hypothesis that you have on how can you generate value for the company. Key hypothesis around feasibility, and those are the only hypotheses that you are trying to validate in a pilot. How do you do competitive study if the idea isn't in the market as product, although there is need? Like, how would you know if some company is already working in the same product in stealth mode? Interesting question. So the answer is that you don't know, right? If some product or company is working on the same idea in stealth mode, then you wouldn't get to know. But generally, in my early days, I used to be worried when there was competition, that, hey, there is somebody else who is also doing this. Now I'm actually generally happy when there is competition, unless it's someone like Amazon who can kill you. Because when there are other companies who are building a similar product in the market, that actually validates the market. That means that other people have also seen the same need. And if they have actually created a product that some users are using, then you can learn from that product and that users, and use those learnings for building your own product. So competition, again, is not bad. It's interesting. It's important to know your competition. It's important to know how you are better than them, but having competition is not bad. When you have a great technical product, how do you decide between going for a publication or a patent? I don't think I'm the right person to answer this. I'm primarily talking about products which are something that an end user is using, and the end user could be a developer, could be a customer, could be a business. Whereas when you are creating something which is like a publication or a patent, that's a completely different ballgame. The next question is, I personally find it difficult to define success metrics for a new feature. Can you suggest how one should define success metrics? So this is a good question, and I think there are multiple ways of approaching this. The way I generally approach this is that there are two kinds of success metrics. One is a input metric and second is output metric. Input metric is something that your product is directly impacting. So if I have to give you an example, if I am making some changes to the Swiggy menu flow, which makes the menu more enticing for users to order, then my input metric there is actually the conversion, that how many users convert from menu to cart. But what are my output metrics? Again, this is like a subjective definition, so that could also be called as an output metric. But my output metric here could be the actual impact on the business. So my output impact here could be that because my menu to conversion growth improved, how did my overall conversion improve? So that, how many people who came to the app eventually ended up making a transaction. So how many extra orders that I'm getting, and what is the extra revenue or profit that I'm making from this particular change. So if we are talking from a feature point of view, then that's how you define success metrics. If you are generally talking from an entire product point of view, then your metrics are defined in different parts of the user flow. So the different parts that I would talk about is acquisition. So there are success metrics around acquisition of users. Then there are success metrics around activation of users, that you got a user, but now did that user have a good first experience? Because it's you can just throw money and get users to download your app, but if they don't log in, then it's not really useful, right? Or if they don't have if let's say someone comes to Swiggy but doesn't make an order, then that's not really useful for Swiggy. So then there are activation metrics. The third is retention metrics. So retention metrics is that basically now you have a user, how are you retaining the user? What are the number of transactions that a user is doing, or what are the and transactions is something that's true for Swiggy, but for Instagram could be that how many posts is a user doing in a particular month? What are your in how much time does a particular user churn? So if a user came today, if 100 users came today, how many users would you have 5 months down the line? So those become your retention metrics. Then you have referral metrics, that now if you have a referral flow in your product, then how are you getting growth from referral? That are users of your product referring your product to other users? How many extra users is a single user bringing? And the last kind of success metrics are around monetization, which is money. So basically the users that you are retaining, the users that are getting, how much money are they creating for you? How much revenue are you getting? Of the revenue that you are getting, how much is the profit that you are getting? What is the kind of cost that you have? So these are the different, this is a general framework of, defining success metrics for each part of a user journey. But again, the exact metrics would depend on what the product is. But I hope that this kind of framework around input output metrics and the different parts of the user flow helps.